Hello everyone. My name is Kamala Liklova, and I'm the engagement manager at Aliant. I'm here with Kim, who is Aliant's marketing director, and we will be your moderators for today. I would like to welcome you to this Aliant's webinar on real estate navigation in post-COVID market. Because Aliant's practice is so international in scope, we thought it would be interesting to take a look at several different real estate markets and see what issues investors in these markets should be aware of, and what our lawyers are experiencing in their day-to-day businesses. Today's speakers are lawyers from 5 different countries: the United States, Italy, Cyprus, France, and Finland. They will answer questions relevant to clients, to international investors, and to lawyers. I think it will be interesting to observe what are the common issues and differences that are present in everyday market. We hope to keep this interactive and conversational, and if any of the audience has any questions, please submit it to me through the chat, and I will ask the speakers at the very end. So the first country we will cover is USA. Our first speaker will be Jacob Stein from Aliant's Los Angeles office. Jacob represents many wealthy and ultra-wealthy families in the US, as well as private companies, many foreign investors from Europe and Asia who invest in the US. Hi, Jacob. Thank you for joining us. Perhaps we can start with the question on what has it been like for the real estate market in the United States since COVID started, and what should foreign investors be aware of?
Well, that's a good question, and hi Kamala, hi everyone. Greetings from Los Angeles, where the skies have finally opened up, and it's we're having a big storm outside, but we'll power through this. So it's a simple question what the real estate market has been like, but there are so many different issues to address here. So let's talk about 2 things. Let's talk about what the real estate market is like generally, and what is it like from a legal perspective. And generally, the real estate market, I think, like everywhere else around the world, has been very, very hot. I just recently read that nationwide, and we are a big country, so it's hard to generalize something local like real estate, but nationwide, prices are up about 30% for the past 12 months. And luxury and ultra luxury real estate is up even more. I just saw yesterday that ultra luxury real estate in Hawaii for the past 12 months is up 600%, which are unreal numbers. Of course, this is all residential real estate. It's powered by very low inventory, a lot of demand, millennials coming into the market, very low interest rates. And we've been seeing over the past year a lot of our foreign clients investing in US real estate. So residential has just been super, super hot. The same has been true for multi-tenant properties like apartment buildings, for industrial and logistics properties. All have been really good investments with great growth. Commercial properties have not been doing so well. Office space has been kind of in a holding pattern. Prices have not declined. They've not gone up. They've just been steady. There's been also no change in the level of development that has been holding steady. But what we're seeing from our developer clients is that tenant needs have changed. So our developer clients are trying to take that into account. What kind of office space do tenants need in the post-pandemic world? Perhaps more shared space, things like that. The one market segment that has declined and continues to decline is retail. There's still a lot of uncertainty about future closures, mandates. A lot of business, even more business has moved online. So that's a tough market to be in. From a legal perspective, there's certainly been a lot of government intervention in the real estate market. And this is both from our federal government and each of the states. As far as we know, there is an eviction moratorium for residential real estate in every US state. And that moratorium takes different forms. Some states prohibit publishing a notice of eviction. Some prohibit filing eviction paperwork with the court. Some have suspended hearings. But the result is all the same. There are no evictions. There's also, I think there's a federal law that has a mortgage forbearance in effect for 1 to 4 unit rental properties. So forbearance meaning that borrowers do not have to pay the mortgages and there's like a long delay, and borrowers just need to submit declarations that they're having a tough time, and lenders must give them a deferral. We've seen some local governments providing assistance to smaller landlords. So for example, in Los Angeles, both the city and the county governments provide assistance to small landlords, again, under 4 unit rentals, if they can show that their tenants have not been paying rent. Some states have extended eviction moratoriums to commercial properties. So like I remember at the start of the pandemic, we had very large clients who had tenants like Walmart, right? And McDonald's, and even those tenants were not paying rent because they didn't have to. And so now we're slowly starting to see it. Some states are starting to end eviction moratoriums for commercial properties. So slowly we see states coming out of the pandemic. And as always, you know, the government is picking losers and winners. You know, and mostly it's the tenants who are getting the windfall of government actions, right? The government is sort of protecting tenants at the expense of landlords, which is kind of interesting because landlords still have their financial obligations as well, right? They also borrowed money. And not all landlords are large and can absorb this financial stress. A lot of them are mom and pop businesses. So we've been representing, you know, lots of different clients in real estate over the past 18 months, across all sectors, so across the entire vertical segment of real estate. You know, borrowers, lenders, developers, tenants, underwriters, I mean, you name it. Everyone has suffered in the real estate market. Kamala?
Thank you, Jacob, for that summary. One more question I have for you, if you don't mind. How has the legal work you're doing currently for clients changed since COVID started? Is there a difference today than, let's say, from April of 2020?
It's an interesting question. How has the work we're doing changed? You know, I remember that, you know, like at the beginning of COVID had a huge impact on our clients. I remember like back in April and May of 2020, like one of our largest clients called me. They are the largest private operator of parking lots in the United States. Many of their properties are at airports, and they had almost no revenue coming in, and the owners were very concerned about the personal guarantees they signed to the lenders. And back then, that was everyone's concern. And we did like a ton of legal work for a lot of different people in real estate, whether they're tenants or borrowers, who were dealing with personal guarantee issues and trying to insulate clients from the personal guarantees they signed. And early on, there was also a lot of work with sort of interpreting existing legal agreements, right? The agreements that everyone had already in place. Like, how's the force majeure clause worded? Does it apply only to the pandemic itself, or does it apply to government orders? Did our client's business close because of the pandemic or because of a government mandate, right? Looking at things like under the agreements, you know, what remedies does the tenant have available if they cannot use the property? Like usually, you know, when we represent tenants, and this goes back many years, we will always try to insert an early termination provision into the lease based on inability to use the property. And whether the landlord accepts an early termination provision, right, usually depends on the relative bargaining strength of the parties. So if I'm usually representing the tenant, I want them out of that lease if they cannot use the property for 60 days or more. If I'm representing the landlord, I will ask for 180 days before they can terminate the lease. What we're seeing now, which is kind of interesting, is now landlords want the right to terminate the lease. You know, in a lot of leases that we see, landlords get a percentage of gross revenues from tenants, right? And with this, you know, market, with this economy we have going on, with a lot of tenants going under, landlords want the ability to put in a different tenant that will be more financially successful, so that their percentage of gross, that number is going to be higher. Other ways that legal work has shifted over the past, let's say 6 to 10 months is that it seems like everyone has accepted that COVID is here to stay, right? Clients want longer term solutions now. So we are seeing a couple of things going on. One is there's a lot more negotiation going on, right? Before, at the outset of COVID, everything was kind of standing still. Let's see what happens. When will businesses reopen? When will the moratorium on foreclosures expire? Does the landlord have another business they would be able to bring in, right? So today, landlords stand in sort of accepting what is, and we're seeing a lot more modification negotiations going on. Some landlords understand that the existing tenant may be their best bet. Their business may recover one day, right? They need to give the tenant a chance. Maybe they need to give the tenant better financial terms, allow the tenant more time to catch up on the back rent. One thing we have to keep in mind is that on a lot of loan agreements that finance commercial properties will require lender approval anytime the lease is being modified, especially if we're modifying rent payments, right? So we usually will have to show the lender that the tenant's financials are way worse than they used to be. So over the past 18 months, there's certainly been a lot of work from the shift in work from responding to fears that the pandemic has brought on to figuring out more long-term ways of dealing with them, dealing with these issues. And looking to the future, I think the eviction moratoriums and mandatory loan forbearances will begin to expire. Then we will see a rise in bankruptcy filings. So far in the United States, we have not really seen a lot of bankruptcy filings. And in bankruptcy in the United States, a tenant always has to either assume or reject the lease. They have the right to do so. And if the tenant wants to assume the lease, meaning they want to stay in that property in their current lease, they first of all have to catch up on all of their unpaid rent. And then they have to provide some sort of a performance guarantee, right, of being, or financial assurance in a sense, of being able to make future lease payments. And then there are cases that are just really tough. Like I have a client right now in Los Angeles, one of my favorite clients. They are a tenant, a very large commercial tenant. And, they are back on their rent. They're in arrears for the past 18 months in a large location downtown Los Angeles. And the landlord is absolutely refusing to negotiate with them, taking it very personal. So for a client like that, they're large and successful, and bankruptcy is not an option, not an option. The landlord is refusing to negotiate. So what do you do in a case like that? That's kind of a tough one.
Thank you, Jacob, for navigating us through the US market. Thank you very much. Okay, let's move our attention to Europe now, where I would like to start with Italy, who will be represented by Claudia Bertoland. She's the head of Aliant's Italy practice and has a long-standing experience in various aspects of real estate. She represents many international clients, both private individuals and companies, in acquisition and management of real estate properties in Italy. Claudia has a dual bar membership in California and Italy, which allows her to fully understand her clients' needs and requests, as well as offer a fiduciary end-to-end legal assistance. Ciao, Claudia. Thank you for being with us.
Hi, Kamala. Thank you for the introduction, and good afternoon to everyone who's in Europe, and good morning to everyone who's on a different time zone.
The question I have for you is, what will the Italian real estate market look like in 2022, so next year? And are there any good opportunities for foreign investors in Italy?
Yes. Well, I would say that the answer is definitely yes. There is plenty of good opportunities here in Italy. As opposed to what Jacob was saying, this is still a buyer's market. So there are a lot of opportunities here for buyers. all over Italy, except I would say for the Milan. Milan is a city which has been rising nonetheless. The pandemic in Italy, like in many other countries and like in many other sectors, acted really as a catalyst agent. It produced a shock, and it helped and it led to changes what was already undergoing a change. So it basically it accelerated the processes that were already underway. Like a client of ours says, everything that was already being disrupted is now being disrupted. Meaning that there are certain sectors that definitely are flourishing, and other that are still suffering. For example, here too, like in the US, but here as well, the retail is still suffering. This is probably due to the flourishing of the e-commerce. Everybody know in the pandemic has been doing a lot of online shopping. And so the retail is still, under the weather. Well, then the two most flourishing sectors though are logistic, and then again, probably again linked to the flourishing of the e-commerce, and unexpectedly also residential. We'll go over it in a little bit, but there are other sectors that are still very interesting. For example, we've seen a lot of foreign investors into hotel chains, luxury hotels in the main cities, but also, in other areas like vacation areas like Sardinia, Tuscany. And hotels, of course, has been a sector that suffered a sudden stop because of the pandemic. We were not even allowed to go out for during the lockdown like everyone else. And of course, tourism that has always been big in Italy was down to zero. I live in Rome. This is a big touristy city, and there were like none around. But investors are looking into it. They're looking for good opportunities because, of course, the business suffered, and of course, there are good buying opportunities, and it's considered a sector that will, be up again once the health crisis will unfold. As to other sectors like offices is pretty controversial. Is like again in the US, even here, it has it's in a holding pattern. Like there are questions. There's a lot of talk about the size of the office, their configuration, and even their nature and their purpose. Also, in light of what it's so-called the new normals, like this new way of working and remote working, smart working, etc. So, but still, offices remain a big asset class for the Italian market. We were saying that the living asset class is flourishing, and that is so true. We in fact, as an office, we have a lot of foreign clients, mainly from the US, but also from Russia, that are looking into buying properties in Italy. And properties, not in the main cities, but countryside, lake, seaside, and this could be for a change of life, or as a vacation home, or even someone is considering to do like remote working. And what is interesting is that for investors, even foreign investors, of course, there's a reciprocity condition. So you will have to check that if you are allowed to buy in Italy. Most cases, yes, like no problem with, of course, all over Europe. There are some cases that have to look into well with Switzerland, for example, but no problem with the US, Russia. And what is interesting is that Italy, that is considered usually a country where the taxation is not very friendly. For real estate, it is friendly, because if you think about it, that if you buy, a property, and let's say you're a private individual, and then you keep it for 5 years, which is not a lot, and then you sell it again and you make a markup, well, your capital gain is tax-free. So that is not bad. Although also, some of our clients, they bought vacation homes and then maybe were not using them, or, they wanted to make a profit, because if you buy in Sardinia, you can rent properties for a very high income. Well, then there's a tax rule that says that you can either, submit your taxes with your ordinary income, and then it depends on, what's your income in Italy, the tax brackets. But what's interesting is there are also some flat rate taxes. So for rentals, depending on the lease, but it will go from 10% to 21%. And on the gross annual rental income. And that's not bad, actually. So some clients have been looking into that, and besides, buying as a vacation home, they're now looking, hey, we can also buy to rent instead of buying and using it as a vacation home. So extra investments. Even if you want to buy and that's your second home, because to buy as a first home, you would have to be a resident of Italy. So that would be, of course, very advantageous tax-wise. But even if you're not a resident of Italy, you pay as a property tax transaction at the time you're buying something. You'll pay 9% of a figurative income of that property. That means it's not 9% on the fair market value or the purchase price, which would be higher, but it's 9% on a calculation that is, actually, lower. So for all these reasons and for other reasons that are also, the high request for student housing, it's another great market. A lot of, real estate funds are investing money. We have tons of university cities here, smaller cities. We're not talking about Milan or Rome or Florence, but we're talking about Bologna, which, by the way, is the city I'm from. We're talking about Pisa, Macerata, and even Venice, or some other small cities. There is a high demand for student housing, and there's not enough supply. So that's another interesting market. And then we have senior housing. Besides that, there's a cultural change. We have to know that is that especially younger generations do not consider to own the house like a primary need. So for all these reasons, it's good to the residential market is throwing in terms of investment. In terms of legal considerations that I have to do on the real estate market, well, the most interesting thing is that, well, the balance of powers between landlords and tenants has really changed with the pandemic, and even now. Just figure that, for example, in Milan or in Rome, we used to negotiate for our clients like 6 months free rent, for big offices, for example, or, for big commercial spaces, 6 months rent. And it is now up to 18 months rent. So that's how the balance of power has shifted post-pandemic. And this is interesting because we have a US client that's actually a very dear client that has invested in Rome and has opened a clinic, medical clinic. So we negotiated, way before the pandemic, and we had obtained 8 free months of rent. Well, then in the meantime, we were supposed to ask for, the permits to operate the clinic. Well, in the meantime, the pandemic hit us with that. So the administrative process came to a halt, and while the months and the time was going by, so we ended up that we did not have the permits and the rent was due. So just to tell you how the powers have shifted, and landlords are keener to to keep their tenants if they're good tenants. The tenants, which in this case is a big real estate fund, they did not take legal action, of course, but they didn't even enforce the bank guarantee that our client had given them at the beginning of the lease. And they just gave an extension to pay rent without any interest, but many months following the due date. So, tenants and landlords, it has changed as a relationship. Besides, our legislator, as I understand, differently from other countries, has not come into the relationship sharply. Besides the fact that we also have a moratorium that for defaulting tenants, which are not will not be evicted until 31st December 2021. So that's the end of it, year end. But besides that, our legislator did not come into, with the rules, sharp rules saying, because of the pandemic, tenants may not pay rent. No, it just came more softly with the rules saying that compliance with the containment measure by tenants is something that has to be regarded and considered in evaluating possible breaches by the tenants, and also in terms of damages reimbursement. So, for example, there's a case that we handled of a dentist that was not hit by the containment measures because dentists could work during lockdown, but it was delayed in paying rent because still the business suffered. And again, here the court took several considerations into play and rejected the landlord's request to evict the tenant for serious breach of contract. So it took into consideration that, yes, there is a pandemic, the dentist had always paid, it was in fact hit in somehow because it has shown evidence that the turnover had lowered considerably. So basically no sharp rule in our country, no sharp intervention of the legislator. One of the things that I have to say is that the court cases are more and more oriented in just saying that landlords and tenants have to negotiate in case there's a breach. So that's kind of the overall
Thank you, Claudia.
Picture.
Thank you, Claudia, for your wonderful answer and navigation through the Italian real estate market.
Thank you, Camola. I hope I gave you an idea of pretty much what's going on.
Okay, guys, so let's remain in the Mediterranean, where we move our attention to Cyprus. Today with Cyprus, we have Socrates Parparinos. He is the head of Aliant Cyprus office, and he is a practicing lawyer since 2006. Socrates is a member of Cyprus Bar Association, and he is based in Nicosia. His expertise is mainly in corporate and commercial law. Hi, Socrates. Thank you for being with us. My first question to you would be, what is the impact of the pandemic on the contractual performances in relation to real estate?
Hi, Kamala, and hi, everyone. Thank you very much for your question, and it was wonderful to hear the previous two speakers, both Jacob and Claudia. I'll try to keep up with what they've said, and hopefully it's going to be the same interesting as the two previous speakers. So, pandemic and the impact of pandemic, I guess, is more or less the same like most of the countries. Cyprus, as an island, basically a small country here in the Mediterranean, it's the most influences we have, and the the impact in contractual agreements was mostly evident in contracts of sales of newly established residential houses or commercial buildings, lease agreements, and or construction contracts, construction agreements. At least this is what our office here in Cyprus encountered with. Within 2020, when was the beginning of the pandemic, everyone was a little more, lenient with respect to the non-payment of leases or the delay on the delivery dates of new buildings. But with the pandemic going on and on and on, things change a bit. So similarly with US, the government decided to step in and try and help a bit with the situation so that to avoid having all these disputes. From our experience, two of our big clients, one of them, which is a logistic company, have signed beginning of 2020 a big agreement with IKEA. They found themselves renting a big warehouse to be able to support their client. At the end of the day, they were unable to repay their rents, and that was a big problem for them. So we tried to negotiate together with the lawyers of IKEA and try to find a middle ground for avoiding court. The government was one of the financial, apart from the fact that it was helping a lot of employers with the furlough schemes and different other financial aid, it was also giving a lot of tax incentives to landlords if they would be accepting like a 30% discount on rents. However, this was not compulsory. So and maybe it was depending on the landlord whether it would accept this discount on rent or not. Slowly with the COVID continuing even today and with lockdowns, the clients were more or less trying to focus on the clauses of contracts and try and find a way out. In another instance, one of our clients who bought a property from a developer received a letter from the developer who claimed that COVID was under the force majeure clauses. So he decided by himself to terminate the contract as it was a force majeure, as was, apart from what he said, basically this was giving him a right under the force majeure clause of the contract, which was not actually the case. More or less, they were trying to find excuses to get away from contracts, but it didn't work. Again, I guess it depends from the facts and the circumstances of each case. So each time we have to examine the provisions of the contracts and be able to interpret in a way and advise our clients accordingly. As it stands today with respect to contractual disputes, there haven't been any precedents yet in a court of law. Usually courts here in Cyprus, they take a little bit of time to come to a decision. So it's yet to be seen whether any such cases under COVID will eventually be justified under force majeure clauses, which is something that we haven't seen yet. So that's it basically.
Thank you, Socrates, for your answer. I have one more question, if you don't mind.
Yes.
What is the current situation of the real estate market currently in Cyprus?
Real estate now has become okay. In 2020, of course, everything was going very slow. There haven't been a lot of sales. Traditionally, we have been attracting clients from international clients. We are a holiday destination. We have a lot of pensioners that come here in Cyprus to buy a house and retire. We have clients that they are coming here either to invest and buy a house with the intention to get permanent residency and hopefully an EU passport. And we have also always the local market, which is a very important factor when it comes to real estate. In 2020, international clients, of course, were a scarce commodity, if I could say that, because again, COVID, not a lot of them were able to travel in Cyprus. Currently, what we see, what actually saved, if I can say that, the real estate market was basically the local market. Credit institutions and banks that they had in their portfolio, non-performing loans, and they had a lot of properties for sale. Locals found an excuse and found an opportunity to invest in properties, given the negative interest again the banks were giving. So currently, the real estate is moving quite well. Even though that we have one of the impacts that we had with our Cyprus investment scheme, which was terminated, the government will eventually announce something mid of next year. However, as it is now, most of the real estate is moving with locals, and international clients are mostly tech companies and shipping companies that are focusing on having an office here in the island. Again, reasons are the low taxation they have, the fact that we have a lot of, they can find easily personnel and staff, which they can speak fluent English, and low salaries, again, in comparison with other European countries.
Thank you, Socrates, for explaining to us the post-COVID situation in Cyprus. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, let's move to Western Europe now and see what is happening with real estate in France. Today from France we have Fanny Turon. She's a partner at Aliant's Paris office. Fanny is often involved in real estate litigations and has also developed a strong experience in commercial lease litigation and law and collective procedures. We also have Jonathan Pierre-Louis, who is also a litigator at Aliant's Paris office and deals with private and business law issues on a daily basis. And like Fanny, he has a significant real estate law experience. Hi, Fanny and Jonathan. Thank you for joining us. The first question I have would be going to Fanny. Fanny, what has been the impact of the pandemic on the relationship between lessor and lessees in France, and what solutions do you usually see that preserve the interests of both parties?
Hello, Carmola. Hello, everybody. In France, as in other countries, the government has taken different measures to avoid an economic disaster. Because the containment measure, we know that the retailers are deprived of a large part of their turnover. Which measure are we talking about? First, financial support. Second, possibility to suspend the payment of the COVID rent. And finally, protection of the leases during the legally protected periods, which deprive lessor of the right to take action for recovery the COVID rent in case of late payment. Being specified that this measure applicable under certain condition of turnover and number of employees. With this measure, the government thought that there will be enough and a balance has been found between the interest of the lessor and the interest of the lessee. Indeed, the rents are still due, but their payment is suspended during a determined period. And above all, during this period, the lessor is deprived of acting. In France, this period is March until September 2020 and October 2020 until July 2021. But things were not so easy because the crisis has opened doors. The lessees have tried to find other legal arguments to contest the payment of the rent. And among these arguments, the obligation to negotiate in good faith, the theory of enforceability. Circumstances are enforceable, the contract becomes too onerous, so the party must negotiate. Another one theory is the theory of the exception of non-performance. My shop was closed, I didn't make any sale, so I don't pay. So there are two opposing positions. The position of the lessee, we don't pay the COVID rent, operate the business and try to gain times. And another position, the lessor position, who wants to be paid and filing that could terminate the lease contract. This situation has created a lot of litigations that we manage daily for our clients. While waiting for a clear case law, the search of alternative to the judicial issue, encouraged by the judge, appears the most prudent solution. As a result, we think that in the interest of all, the key to getting out this situation is to negotiate. Why negotiate? Negotiate because in many cases, a balance can be found. The lessor agrees to give up part of his claim and the lessee pays the balance according to schedule. The contract continues, but if the lessee doesn't respect his commitment, the contract is terminated. In this case, we think that the assistance of the lawyer is useful. First, it will ensure the confidentiality of the exchange during the negotiation. So if the discussions are not successful, the party cannot talk about what was said. And it's very important. But especially, it will make it possible to avoid the many traps which the party can be confronted. I wish to draw your attention to the sanitary crisis is above all an economic crisis, and it's necessary to master many subjects as litigation, lease litigation, recovery procedure, or insolvency procedure. We work daily on this issue, so that's why Aliant France can help each of you. So don't hesitate if you have any matter.
Thank you, Fanny. Now a quick follow-up for Jonathan. Where is the French real estate market today, and what are, now that we're almost 2 years into COVID?
Hi, Kamala. Thank you for the introduction and good evening for all the people gathered for this webinar. Your question is very good, Kamala, because after this first part presented by Fanny about the management of the pandemic, it's logical to talk about the assessment following the health crisis to see if the measures taken were efficient. To understand the assessment, we have to talk first about the situation before the pandemic. Prior to the health crisis, retailers and shopping center lessors had begun to change their business model. In fact, retailers were focusing their development on improving communication channel and sales on the internet. And for shopping centers, they had begun to develop all the leisure activity that can be offered in shopping malls. These developments that were made in order to meet the new needs of customers who no longer come in malls only to shop. And following the pandemic, the first thing that we can observe is that the previous trends have accelerated due to the alternate periods of closures and opening and the implementation of sanitary protocol. Like I said before, the first trend was the innovation of shopping mall spaces. The innovation takes place with a lot of events to attract and keep the customer with animation of all kinds, like cultural animation, culinary, technologic. In fact, they want to bring some higher value to the mall compared to classic shop. The second trend was the most important. It was the development of the online retail. In fact, all of our clients who did not have an online presence rushed to create websites to face with the administrative closure. Especially for a retailer, an internet website is a must-have. This is why we also offer a service to the company who wants to set up sales on the internet with the drafting of terms of sale or compliance with the general data protection regulation, for example. And you know, now with the new habit of consumption, it's impossible for a retailer to not have a website. But retailers also take some benefits from the crisis because they're benefiting from the rise of click and collect. In fact, the click and collect has been used for activity that did not use it before, such as clothing store or bookstores. In the beginning, click and collect was only for the restaurants, but it expanded. And with the closure of many businesses and the massive development of telecommuting, it has also had a different impact on a real commercial estate. We asked our retailer clients what were the impacts of telecommuting on their business on a weekly or monthly basis. And they told us that 1 day of telecommuting in a given area have a 20% decrease impact on their weekly sale. This is very high, and they have to adapt to that. And telecommuting has also led companies to rethink their organization by practicing flex office, for example. According to the French Commercial Real Estate Observatory, the retail investment market has decreased significantly in 2020, with a 40% decrease compared to 2019. But however, this negative post-crisis achievement should be contrasted with the current situation of the commercial real estate. The market is now gradually regaining its pre-health crisis status. You know, on one hand, the rise of telecommuting would never call into question the need for a company to have commercial promise for the employees. And on the other hand, customers are finally returning to shopping, like we can see a 15% increase activity between June 2020 and June 2021. And retailers now, they are planning again and taking the step of renting, acquiring a commercial space. So this is a good upward for France. We can see a strong rental demand and upward trend in major cities in France, with, for example, the inflation reaching 10% in Paris about the commercial real estate. And also, it should be noted that this period of health crisis is characterized in France by an extremely low number of insolvency proceedings compared to the previous year. This low number can be explained by the fact that for certain months, a certain professional who were already in difficulty before the health crisis have been on a state money provision due to the numerous measures put in place to support business, like the measure that Fanny told us earlier. And for example, they state do a lot of things to help the business because the revenue from the click and collect were not taken into account to benefit from the state support, for example. So companies that were already in a bad situation before the crisis were able to benefit from the state support in order to not stop the activities. In fact, in the end of the year, we have saw that there were less of 20,000 opening of insolvency procedure between March 2020 and June 2021 compared to the previous year. So we can say that the state has saved a lot of companies in France. But now the question now arises, what?
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you to our French team for a wonderful explanation of the real estate in France post-COVID. Finally, let's finish up our journey of real estate in post-COVID in the very north of Europe, which is Finland. Today we have Tuomo Kauto. He's the head of Aliant's Finland office. Over the past 25 years, Tuomo has worked on over 1,000 business transactions. He has represented businesses of all sizes engaging in cross-border transactions, international projects, investments in a diverse range of industries, including construction and real estate. Hi, Tuomo. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, thank you. My pleasure.
Here's my question to you. What does the Finnish real estate market look like now, and are there any new opportunities in real estate in Finland for foreign investors?
Thank you. First, the impact of pandemic, just briefly. I think the issue here is whether there are any new or revised regulations affecting the rights and obligations of the parties in commercial real estate or premises. And in Finland, there are no new regulation, no revised regulation, nor are there any, to my knowledge, any relevant court decisions affecting to rights and obligations of the parties in commercial real estate or commercial premises. So it means that the Finnish real estate market in that sense is stable and predictable. In that sense, it favors real estate owners, and once it favors real estate owners, it also favors investors, because in my experience, the value of the target company or real estate is higher once there are no reliefs, for instance, for the tenants. Secondly, what is the big issue in Finland, or new issue? The big issue in Finland now and in the future will be so-called alliance model in real estate projects. It has been increasingly adopted in large real estate projects over the past 5 years, and it's increasing. Alliance model is a contract model with several players instead of just 2 contract parties and sub-contract parties for those 2 main contract parties. This contract model constitutes a legal structure of an organization having collaborative parties with a single goal and shared objectives. And we have found out that this concept works very well in complex projects. And I have witnessed that many problems typical to large projects can be avoided, including splitting of supply chains. Just a few examples. What's the difference between alliance model and conventional contract structure? First, the parties in this new alliance model, there are several parties: contractors, architects, structure designers, technical designers, and many others in the same. It was not that earlier. Document administration is maintained together. Also, these parties have joint target value design. There's also so-called big room or co-location, means that high number of players are working in the same space during the project. And integration of digital systems is one feature of this model. In our experience, this legal structure or business concept is especially a reliable model in terms of contract periods, and costs. Very seldom, if ever, the budgets have been exceeded and very seldom, if ever, scheduled time have been extended in Finland. And there are several famous projects which have been very successful in Finland. And one of the most visible, and also the very last one, is the new main terminal of Helsinki Airport. It was completed and opened just 2 weeks ago, in the first day of December, exactly in the scheduled time and also in the budget. Finally, I tell a couple of examples about the investment trends in Finland, which I believe will be increasing in the future. First is data centers. Investments to data centers have been increasing, and there are several reasons why Finland is a very good environment for that. But I think one very important reason is our climate. Data centers need lots of cooling, and in Finland we have, in winter period, long winter period, we have cold air. Also, such data centers produce heat, and again, it's win-win situation. In Finland, in cold period, we need lots of heating. Second is energy field and clean tech. Investments, especially battery fields, battery factories, plants, and real estate having battery plants have been increasing. There are huge investments going on in that field. And the third example is Aviapolis. That is an international airport city located just in surrounding areas of Helsinki Airport. And it has not only typical businesses in which are typical at airport area, but all kinds of international business. It's becoming international business hub, and as a matter of fact, it is, if not the largest, it is the second largest employment center in Finland at this moment, and it is increasing. Also, it is the fastest growing business center in Finland and in Helsinki area. So in Aviapolis, there are lots of potential for foreign investors as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Tomo, for clarifying the opportunities for foreign investors in Finland. Thank you. Well, that's all we have for today from our wonderful lawyers. Again, a great big thank you to each of our speakers. It was both interesting and educational for me, at least, and I'm sure for our audience as well. We have time for just a couple of audience questions, and let's see. So the first one we have is for Jacob Stein in Los Angeles. Hi again, Jacob.
Hi there.
So the question is for you, have the levels of foreign direct investment in the US returned to pre-COVID levels?
That's a good question. I would say that for the first year of COVID, foreign direct investment went down. I think just all sorts of international work, at least that we were seeing in our office, went down significantly, almost down to a trickle. As of about, I would say 8 months ago or so, the faucet was opened back up, and we're seeing a lot of foreign direct investment coming back into the United States, especially into the real estate market. We're seeing lots of clients from both Europe and Asia coming to the US, investing in all kinds of real estate, from single family homes to apartment buildings industrial space, pretty much everything but commercial, we're seeing foreign investors putting money into.
Thank you, Jacob, for your answer. We have one more question, and it is for Socrates in Cyprus. Hi, Socrates in Cyprus again.
Oh.
So the question is, I recall that one way Cyprus tried to generate investments in its real estate is through a second passport initiative. Does Cyprus still have the way of to acquire a passport by purchasing a real estate?
I didn't hear the second part of the question.
Does Cyprus still have a way to acquire a passport by purchasing real estate?
As it stands now, no, there's no and there's no such a scheme in place. They will most probably announce something, as I said, mid of 2022. There are currently other incentives for investing, but not for a Cyprus passport. The only way you can get Cyprus passport is by naturalization, which basically you have to live in Cyprus for a certain period of years.
Thank you, Socrates. Well, the questions are coming. So we have 2 questions for Claudia. First question, Claudia. Hi again. The question is, do you mean to say capital gains tax is inapplicable in Italy? You're muted.
No, I wish I had. I wish that was the case. No, this is the thing. If you are a buyer, an individual, and you buy something today, and you hold it for a period of 5 years, and then you resell it, and at that point, the price has gone up, most likely, or lucky enough. Then the difference, which is your capital gain, if you held the property for 5 years, is not taxable. That's what I meant. But we do have, unfortunately, capital gain. And in fact, if you buy a house and you sell it the year after you bought it, and you make, an extra money, then you pay according to your ordinary annual income tax. So that's divided in brackets, and the highest one, up to 75,000 euros of income is very high. So in that case, it's not convenient to do it. I mean, you can do it, but you pay capital gain taxes.
Okay, hopefully that answers your question, Abiodun. Hope I pronounced your name correctly. Again, a great big thank you to everyone participating and those listening to this webinar. It was a great pleasure on being a mentor and kind of mediator, and hope to see you at Aliant very soon.